So back to the point though, how have you seen that evolve since you last wrestled, going back to the mid 2000s when you're dropping power bombs in WWE?
I never even paid attention to that. That wasn't even a conversation. There wasn't even a thought like, what do I need to do to really light up my rankings? I think when you first, there's my knucklehead dogs.
I love it. Dog fight. Dog play.
See, they get worked up too. One's a professional wrestler, and one's a sports entertainer. But back to my point, like, we weren't there to those knuckleheads. We weren't thinking about what's going to be my ranking. The only time I ever thought about my ranking as a professional wrestler is when I first broke into business and the PWI had the top 500.
Yep.
There was nothing cooler as a kid that was greener than goose shit. Can I say that? I don't want to get in trouble.
Yeah, we can say whatever. Hell.
So, and I try my best not to curse, but it's a wrestling thing. I'm greener than goose shit. I'm trying to learn this craft, and I'm in the same book as Greg the Hammer Valentine and Hulk Hogan and Ultimate Warrior and all these guys in Japan and all these things. So the only two times I ever, lack of a better term, marked out for a rankings was the first time when I was in the independents, and then when I made the list when I went to Japan. I personally thought that was cool. It didn't get me any more money. It didn't get me any prestige. It didn't put me higher in the card. It didn't give me extra longevity in my contracts. It didn't give me a bus. It didn't give me first-class tickets. That's something that you take for yourself because you're working hard and you go, wow, I appreciate it. As you get older in this business, it don't mean nothing. It doesn't mean anything. And if you hold, I think it's cool that people think of you that way, and when you're ranked and all these things, and I love the fact that they still do it, and these up and comers see their name. Yes, that's cool, but this 5-star thing and getting ranked and labeled as this kind of performer or sports entertainer by someone who, I don't know, who makes a living out of a business he's only been involved in behind a keyboard, and so I feel like back in the day. And I won't say it was Meltzer, but there have been people who've been escorted out for writing what they write or ranking it. Like, people took that personally. You're going to tell Greg Valentine, after a loop that he just had and the storylines he was in and everything he'd done with Tito and everybody else, that his matches weren't 5-star? You weren't even allowed in the locker room, in the building, things like that. So a lot of guys didn't pay attention to it. A lot of guys and girls didn't want it around. Now, it's a prerequisite to being part of the professional wrestling industry. Is where do you rank? Now what? Now we're not going to ask people how many matches they've had. Hey, what was your last ranking? How many stars was your last match? It goes back to, and this is where the old fart in me comes out. Like, you say, how long you been doing this? And someone goes, I've been doing this for 20 years. But you had one match a year for 20 years. It doesn't make you a professional wrestler. It makes you someone who's wrestling under a professional banner because someone's running a show. So I know I haven't answered the question, but that's how the business has changed to me. Like, you got in it for a reason. And whether it was to become famous or to make lots of money and go on to do something else, become a movie star, or because you had nothing else to do, or you were an athlete that was gifted and they brought you into this business. If you made it here and did well, it's because you loved what you were doing, not because of how you were rated. And listen, Triple H didn't get to where he was because he had 75 4- or 5-star matches. How many 5-star matches has Shawn Michaels had? And then how can they justify him leading this new generation of wrestlers when he has less 5-star matches than the Young Bucks?
Yeah. No, you're right. And you're talking the showstopper, Mr. WrestleMania, right?
Yeah.
Grandest stage
Here's
of them
the
all.
guy. How many does Undertaker have? How many do, and how dare they keep doing these things if these guys aren't living up to the standard of 5- and 7-star matches?
I agree. So these are supposed to be significant, right? But when you look at it from that point, it doesn't seem so significant.
I would invite Will Ospreay, Kenny Omega, anybody to come on with us and tell us how they financially benefited, how physically, mentally, health wise they've benefited from this, how their careers benefited because someone's giving them above 4-star matches. If I'm going to go watch Will Ospreay, it's not because of a 5-star rating. It's because of what he does, how he does it, and if I'm invested in what he does. I'm still of the notion of it's storytelling, and you've got to capture my attention. I'm not listening to going on a website and go, wow, that got 4 matches. I'm a big fan. Samoa Joe's terrible because he doesn't have any 5-star matches. Amazing big man. Amazing.
Yeah, he is amazing.
So, I don't understand when it happened. It definitely happened while I was still active. I was just in that group of men and women who didn't let that hold water or decide what you were going to do. And I say this to all the youngsters coming up and people that are in it now that are still young and learning the craft as they go. Don't let that be your measuring stick. Don't let that define you, because then you're not wrestling anymore. You're not entertaining. You're trying to, we hear a lot of times in wrestling, you only have to please a crowd of one. And usually people say that about Vince. But if you're doing it just to get a rating, then you're trying to please one guy who's going to give you a 5-star rating. That's not going to pay your rent. That's not going to pay your medical bills. That's not going to get you to the next town. That's not going to get you from making $25 to making $25,000. So it's one of those things, like, I could see if it was a perk and it truly meant something and it helped you elevate in your career and what you want to do and after your career, because you can't cash in those 5 stars when this is all over. You can't, there's no pay window for how many 5-star matches you've had that's going to make you happy when wrestling's over. So I'm just not, like, we can go down this I'm just such not a fan of that ranking system. It's subjective, right? It's, some people dig it and some people don't. And for the most part, I think that the wrestling public in general, they know it doesn't hold any water, but it definitely doesn't determine who they are. I think it's just the progression of, it's like anything else. These were dirt sheets and you had to subscribe and it was a piece of paper or like a whole pamphlet. Now you can just go on the internet and everybody can get to it. So how do I make my product more relevant? Well, I'm going to rate these guys,
Yeah, I think for me with Dave Meltzer, and I'm not going to take away what he's accomplished and everything, but it's, at what point did it go from news to critic?
Yeah.
I mean, that's not news. That's just being critical. That's being a critic. And that's kind of the problem that I have. And it's definitely seemed to get a little bit more biased throughout the years. And who he's a buddy with, I think there's no doubt they obviously get higher things. Not that they're all great wrestlers per se, but yeah, I mean, to me, like, how's that news?
And that's the thing. There's a big difference between critiquing something and criticizing. Yeah. And that platform criticizes everything and tears it down and builds up what it wants to build up. Well, then, and so I suggest this: if they have all this platform to do this, then why are they not suggesting what others need to do to get up to this 5-star rating? How can you make their work better? How can you make them better entertainers, better professional wrestlers, better athletes, better people? Maybe that's what he should be working on. If he wants to truly contribute to this business, instead of just making a living off of it, then maybe his expertise should be in telling people how to achieve a consistent 5-star rating, or this will get you to Japan if I see you do this, or this is what I've learned over my 40 years in the business, and this is what I've seen. Maybe that's what needs to happen.
Yeah. Good point.
And now I'll probably be blocked on Twitter.
It happens. Maybe one day we'll make the unblock. I'm not counting on it, though. Too many jokes.
All right. This is Jeff Townsend of Jeff Townsend Media.
Thank you for checking out the podcast on YouTube. If you're enjoying the show, please subscribe to it, share it with the world, share it with all your friends, your mothers, your brothers, your sisters, everybody. Also, there are plenty of other videos for you to listen to and watch in the meantime. This podcast is also available on all major podcast listening platforms. If you want to learn more about it, go to BillDeMott.com.